Without further ado, here's Christian Salas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Friday, just like mentioned, as is the case typically. The quintessential question, can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. Good. Yes. Sweet. That's always a plus when you can hear me. That means well, it works. Okay. So again, welcome to our recent collaboration with Tejano Virtual Events and the El Paso Community College Mental Health Committee, Mental Health Focus Fridays, a series aimed to not only introduce people like last week to the EPCC Mental Health Committee, but then talk about some issues that could extremely benefit not only students, faculty, and staff, but also the broader community. There you go. So today we'll be talking about what is mental health and mental illnesses. Uh, there are times when these two tend to be mixed up. People tend to use one for the other. They used to use both at the same time. So we're kind of going to dispel that by defining them. Well, let me not get ahead of myself. First and foremost, I would like to thank and make some acknowledgments to my fellow members of the EPCC Mental Health Committee, for without whom I wouldn't have this opportunity because we wouldn't have a committee. And if you guys are not aware of what the EPCC Mental Health Committee is, by all means, please check the Tejano Virtual Events YouTube channel for last week's Mental Health Focus Fridays chat that we had on what is the Mental Health Committee and what we're up to. And as always, if you have any questions after this, or if you are interested in joining our ranks, feel free to contact me, and I will have my contact information up for you all at the end of this workshop. And obviously, and definitely not least, to the TVE staff for their collaboration and giving us the opportunity to come with, for me to come in front of you guys today. All right, so if you've heard me talk before, this isn't anything new. I don't like saying the learning outcomes and expectations. I call it the spoilers because, well, I'm kind of spoiling what the presentation and what this whole thing is about. So spoiler alerts, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be defining mental health and mental illness, and then understanding the different manifestations and presentations of each in students, faculty, and staff. Um, the reason why I like to include all three is because, well, that makes up PCC. That makes up El Paso Community College. It's not just the students, it's not just staff, it's not just faculty, it's all Tejanos, right? So I want to make sure that we do include all members of the Tejano community and the Tejano family. And at the end, I'll leave some time for any individual questions from you all, or maybe even bring up some examples that I have had from my experiences in the classroom. Excuse me. Or any questions that you all might have. Okay, so what is mental health? Again, when we talk about mental health and when we talk about mental illness, there are times that these two concepts or these two terms tend to be mixed up or tend to be interchanged. But in reality, there is a difference. So let's get to it. According to the WHO, and no, that's not the band, but the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. The verbiage might be okay, that's a little too much, but you'll see how important the verbiage is when we start talking about the definition of both mental health and mental illness, and then again, how it's applied. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, the writers of our lovely purple Bible, as I call it, the DSM 5 and beyond, which carries all the criteria and symptoms that we as clinicians utilize to diagnose mental illnesses. But again, we'll talk about that. The APA defines mental health as a state of mind characterized by emotional well being, good behavioral adjustment, relative freedom from anxiety and disabling symptoms, and the capacity to establish constructive relationships and cope with the ordinary demands and stressors of life. As you can see, in both of these definitions, we have some commonalities, right? In both of these, the term well being is brought up. Now, I can assure you that when dealing with mental illness, well being is something that is brought up, but is not usually meant to describe how an individual might be doing. Excuse me. Both definitions really talk about an individual being able to cope with and understand what is happening in their daily stressors. So, before I get too much into the differences and the commonalities, let's move on to mental illness. That way, we have a basis for both. So, what is mental illness? Since we already defined mental health, let's talk about mental illness. Well, mental illness, again, by the American Psychological Association. This is any condition characterized by the cognitive and emotional disturbances, abnormal behaviors, impaired functioning, or any combination of these. Such disorders cannot be accounted for solely by environmental circumstances and may involve physiological, genetic, chemical, social, and other factors. So, as you can see, now we're talking about abnormal behavior, emotional and cognitive, in other words, the way people think, disturbances. This does not talk about anything having to do with people's well being and people, excuse me, and individuals being aware of their situation. Um, the biggest difference between mental health and mental illness is that mental illness, as shown here, as I mentioned earlier, this little purple Bible, I mean, it's a pretty thick book, it's about 900 pages, and it encompasses and it has all the symptoms and all the criteria needed to diagnose mental health, mental illnesses, and mental disorders. So, that's in essence the biggest difference between a mental health and a mental illness, or mental health and mental illness. A mental illness is a diagnosable condition. In other words, there is criteria, there are symptoms that need to be met in order for that diagnosis to be ascribed or to be given. A mental health issue is not a diagnosable condition. Now, it can be a slippery slope because a mental health issue can potentially lead to a mental illness. Let's break this down a bit. So, how might this look like to us, right? Let's say, for example, I am, let's say I go through a breakup, right? And I take it hard and I feel very sad and I feel very distraught and I have some issues with that. Well, at that point, I am I can say that I am feeling sadness and that this is really affecting me. And it can get to a point where this might affect what I'm doing at work. But after a day or two, I get over it, right? That's a mental health issue, is that I am able to cope with it. I might go out with friends, I might sit down, I might cry, I might do something that I know, like, you know what, I just need to pick myself back up. I know this sucks, but I need to pick myself back up. Let's go. Come on, Chris, you got this. That's a mental health issue because again, there's awareness. I have awareness of what's going on. I can I have the coping skills that are helping me manage that situation. Now, let's take this to the extreme. What if that continues and now I start to isolate, and beyond isolating, I stop doing the things that I enjoy doing, right? And now for about a month now, maybe I stopped showing up to work on time. Maybe I stopped going out with friends. I stopped going to church. Um, I tend to be at home most of the time. I oversleep. I might not eat or might eat a little too much. I start having these ideas that, man, you know what? I probably got left because I'm not good enough, and I'm just a bad person, and I'm starting to have all these thoughts about how bad I am. Now we're dealing with potential issues with mental illness. Mental illness, like I mentioned before, has a set of symptoms and a set of criteria. More often than not, these symptoms and these criteria have a time frame, right? That and a duration and an origin. For the example I gave, this could lead to depression. These are symptoms of depression. Depression is typically a number of symptoms, typically five out of the nine symptoms. And I'm not going to go into the minutia and the details of the symptoms of depression and all that. But these five symptoms out of nine, a list of nine, have to be present for at least 2 weeks for the majority of the time, for the majority of the days. Anyways, now we delve into mental illness because we're starting to check off symptoms. We're starting to check off criteria to diagnose a mental illness, a mental disorder. If we go back to the beginning of this conversation where I said, well, I had a breakup, but you know what? I know it was stupid. I know I messed up. Um, I'll get over it. It's okay. And I continue about my life. And yeah, it sucks the first day, the second day, third day, and it starts getting a little bit better. But my function, in other words, what I'm doing at home, what I'm doing at school, at work, um, with peers, is not affected because I am able to manage it. I understand what I need to do. I have the coping skills for it. That's an issue with mental health. That's a mental health issue. So let's take this further and talk about how this can be manifested, excuse me, within our students. Well, let's go right off the bat. Mental health and mental illness in the classroom. What does this look like? Well, mental health issues in the classroom can be from somebody getting a bad grade, right? Someone might be used to getting good grades, but for some reason, this past exam, this past assignment that turned in didn't go so well. They didn't do so hot, and they get a bad grade. You might get the paper, or they see it on Blackboard and they go like, "Oh my God, I didn't study enough long enough. You know what? I didn't understand the concept, or the questions were a little weird. Okay, all right. I got to do better next time. Or you know what? Let me text Salas, or let me email Mr. Salas and see if he can explain why the heck I got a 72 instead of my usual 90 something." That shows that the individual, yeah, there was some issues, right? They felt kind of apachurrados, right? Kind of depressed, kind of sad, uh, a little anxiety of like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? But then they start thinking about, okay, what can I do? So again, there's that awareness, and there's those coping skills of how to deal with the issue at hand. But not everybody handles and deals with things the same way. And that's something that I try to teach my students, and something that we also talk about in mental health committee, that there's no cookie cutter solution for everybody. So you might have that student that goes like, oh well, you know what, I tried. Oh, I'll try harder next time. A bad test grade is not going to mean too much to them, and they keep on going. Next exam, they do better. Awesome. But then we might have some individuals that don't do so well with that, right? And it really creates a tailspin. That bad grade causes other things to spin out of control. Let's just do a for instance. Have a different student, gets a test back, sees their grades on Blackboard. All of a sudden, they have a 72 again, and they're used to getting 90s or so. And they get sad, they get anxious, they get mad at themselves for getting that grade, to the point that when they leave the classroom, people see that they're not themselves. They go to the next class, and maybe now they're not answering questions like they used. They're not as engaged in the class as they used to be, because that's still in the back of their mind, that they're still festering, and that bad grade is there marinating in their mind, to the point that they skip lunch because they're still thinking about this bad grade. um, Later on, maybe on their way home, They run a stop sign, they run a red light, they get stopped by police, they get a ticket, and now they're even angrier because now they have this on top of everything else, and things just start snowballing. Now, is it that going to happen with a ticket and everything? No, but the previous to that, that could happen, and that's very likely or potentially likely to happen. If a person is not able to handle, or how can we put this differently, or has the coping skills necessary to manage that situation, it can very quickly snowball out of control. And that bad grade can set in motion not just that bad day, but now a bad week. And not just that bad week, but a bad 2 weeks. And again, it can stem from someone not having that coping skill, or not being used to having this, and therefore not knowing how to handle it, not knowing how to manage that situation. So, what causes mental health and mental illness issues in our students? Let's start with mental health. Mental health can be anything. It can stem from things at home. It could be the relationship with their parents, relationship with their significant others, at work, at school, the relationship between faculty and student, the relationship between classmates. There's some students that hate group work, right? That they don't like doing group work because they feel that they're the ones doing all the work, or that there's always that one person that is not carrying their load, and now they have to carry the load, and they clash, man, they clash. And so there's like this, oh, I don't want to do group work, and so that creates stress, that creates anxiety, that creates anger. As I tell my students, guys, there's going to be, you're going to end up working in groups at some way, shape, or form when you leave college. Better learn how to deal with it and manage it here than having to do with it and not knowing how to do it out there. Um, I laugh about it, but in reality, I mean, we do manage and we try to work things out, especially in this day and age where everything, we have hybrid classes, we got online classes, we got some face to face, and everybody's schedule is all over the place. Now, mental illness can already come to the classroom. If you recall, and I'm sure you've heard this before, an illness, a disorder, isn't really visible most of the time. You can look at somebody and go like, "Oh man, you could see bipolar in that person from here. Man, you could see that that person has PTSD. Man, that person has an eating disorder." No, it's there's some most of the disorders that we manage and we deal with are excuse me, are not visible. And so there might be times that students come into the classroom with that diagnosis already on them. Now, at the beginning of the semester, I always tell my students, of all places, a social work class should be the place where you should be able to come up to me as a social worker and as a social work faculty member and talk about what we can do to ease the situation. And believe me, I've had students that will come up to me even after the second week, third week, after they we have that rapport building, right? We build that relationship, that student faculty relationship, and they see that I'm not I'm not BSing them, that I truly honestly do care about them, and that I can communicate with them as much as I hope they can communicate with me. And so they'll come up and tell me, "Mr. Salas, you know what? I was diagnosed with this and this and this." There'll be times where I just need to get out of the class. I just need to get up and maybe just pace back here, and I'll sit towards the back, that way I don't disrupt anything. Or can I sit towards the front? Or can I sit over here on the side and maybe just get up sometimes and just stretch because of my diagnosis? Or, sometimes I just feel like the room kind of closes up on me. I need to go outside and walk. Go for it. The fact that they opened up to me and told me this is a huge step. Now, I'm not their therapist. I'm not sitting there and be like, okay, well, let's talk about the situation. No, 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 no. And that is not also something that I'm recommending and suggesting to you all. Um, it's more of being present, and we'll talk about suggestions here towards the end. Excuse me. But mental health issues can come from anywhere. They can come from from home, from relationships, from the school itself, from work, and they can cause issues in the classroom from attention, attendance, even the completion of work. The same with mental illness. Mental illness can come into the classroom again from a previous diagnosis. They could have gone to a therapist already. They could have gone to a clinic and been diagnosed already. So don't think that, oh, we don't have any students with mental illnesses in the classroom. I'm sure we do. They're just maybe not comfortable enough to bring it up, or they feel that they can manage it. And if so, man, more power to them. But leave the door open, crack the door open. Give them that opportunity to say, I'm here for you guys. And like I alluded to earlier, everybody reacts differently to things. There's sometimes, like I said, from day one, I will say, guys, I'm here for you. Whatever I can do, whatever we can do to help you out, by all means, reach out to myself, Mr. Acosta, the rest of the other adjunct faculty. Um, there's the Center for Students with Disabilities. You got note takers. You can get extended time. But if you work with me, we can definitely reach some sort of common ground. And and I tell them, if you don't tell me, I don't know, right? So there's that communication that needs to happen. So there's times where the individuals be like, whatever. And day one, you might have one student come up and just reinforce that. Keep the door open. Um, and it might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the semester until someone finally gets the courage or musters up the courage to be like, you know what? Let me go talk to them. Let me go talk to her. We live in a very different time, guys. This COVID-19, because of the pandemic, you have UTEP who has gone completely back to quote unquote normal with full face-to-face classes. And then you have us who are operating at 50% as far as faculty and students is concerned. But then we also have online classes and hybrid classes. We also have various issues that can impact individuals returning to campus. Think about it. For the past 18 or so months, we've been told if you leave your house, you could get COVID. This can happen to you. This and this can happen. This and this can happen. We've seen a lot of or an increase in phobias in individuals. Why is that? People get in their minds that if they do this, this could happen to them, right? If you step outside of your house, if you go into a crowded area, if you don't wear your mask, if. So we see an increase in phobias. We've also seen an increase in conduct disorder among children. Mind you, our students wear many hats. Not only are they students, but they're also workers, they're also parents, they're also caregivers, as well as us, right? We're not just faculty and staff members. We wear those hats as well. So we got to be mindful of these things and realize that we live in a very unprecedented time. Um, we live in a society in a part of the country that is very touchy feely, right? We hug for everything. We shake hands. I mean, it bugs me that I can't go and shake someone's hand or give somebody a big hug because that's a culture. That's a his culture. I remember seeing earlier as things were starting to reopen, there was this idea of putting, like those wristbands, the little the rubber wristbands that people wear, and having them maybe in the classroom or in areas. They would have green, yellow, and red wristbands to see the comfort level of people. Green mean, hey, maybe I'm vaccinated. I'm okay with you shaking my hand, coming up close, we having a conversation. Yellow is, I'm still kind of doing the fist bump. I'm still kind of doing the elbow, the wing, the let's stay, 6 feet apart. I still wear my mask. And then there's the red, which I'm still full 6 feet, no touch, no wing, no punt, no thing or anything like that. But again, we're not asking. We allow people to let us know their comfort level by putting on that wristband. I thought about doing that for some of my classes, but I think at the end of the day, it was just easy having. I've had, I think, at the most maybe 6 or 7 students per class on some of my hybrid classes, and so I simply just ask. And you can tell, some of the students maybe sit to our particular area of the classroom. They keep their masks on even when the mandate was removed. And again, I ask. Even when we went to the no mask mandate, or not the mandate, but the by President Serrata and the board that said, the EPCC will not following the guidelines, but we do not fall under the mandate by the city, by the da da da, and so masks are not required. I remember I showed up to class the following day and asked students, hey guys, if you saw that email, we don't have to wear masks anymore. However, if you guys are, if someone feels uncomfortable with that, I will continue wearing my mask. I have no issue, no problem with that. But if everybody's okay with that, I will teach class without the mask. I'll still stay up here in the front without walking amongst the rows and such. Uh, but I can teach with or without my mask. Again, if anyone's comfortable or uncomfortable with it, it's up to you guys. And so in a very democratic process, I allowed the students to let me know whether or not they were comfortable with it. So that addresses in essence the returning to campus. Well, what about our faculty? Hey, look at that. Now, I don't want to be a spoiler, but if we go to the next one, we go to the staff, hey, how about that? There's the same things, right? Mental health and issues in the classroom, mental health, mental illness. Everybody uh, reacts differently to things. COVID-19 era, returning to campus for staff, for faculty, and for students. Haha, okay. The reason I did that is because we can differentiate. We're all the same, right? We're all Tejanos, and we can't put one above the other. Uh, the success of all of us is equals the success of each of us, and equals the success of the college. If we don't have each of the components of our EPCC family at mind, then we really don't have the mindset of caring for everybody. So, like I mentioned earlier, my belief is that we need to make sure that we ensure and that we address the issues that are present or could be present, not just for students, but for faculty and for staff. So, with that said, let's tackle faculty this time. How does mental health and mental illness look like in the classroom for faculty? Well, mental health, again, could be caused by, just like we talked about it, issues at home. I gave a workshop for the Canutillo ISD teacher, or for Canutillo ISD teachers about a week or so ago on social emotional learning. And this was one of the areas that I discussed, that as educators, we are seen as robots sometimes, right? That we don't have issues, we don't have problems. We are faculty members. We're like superheroes, right? Or sometimes they think we are. Maybe our bosses think we are because we get so much to do. No, okay. But um, do you recall maybe when you were younger, and did you ever see one of your teachers out in the grocery store, or just out and about somewhere, and you're going, oh, what? They leave the school? They're wearing shorts, or they're wearing, but they always, it boggled your mind, right? When you saw your teacher out like a normal person. But that just kind of goes to show we're human. We are affected by issues just as much as our students are. We wear those multiple hats just as our students wear. We don't wear the student hat. We might be students ourselves, right? We might be going for another master's, for a certification, for a doctorate, uh, some sort of higher degree or licensure. So yes, we could also wear that hat of student, but we also wear that hat of faculty member. And more often than not, we are that first line of defense for the students' mental health and students' mental illness, which adds a little bit more stress. But anyways, I digress. Mental health in faculty can stem from also things at home. things at work, how our relationship is with a college, how the relationship is within our division, within our discipline, with coworkers, parking, our assignment, our classroom assignment, our classes, um, transitioning to online and hybrid. That could be stressful. I've heard of faculty members, not only from EPCC, from other universities, that decide to retire because they're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. I'm done. So that's their way of coping with it. That's their way of dealing with their mental health. It's just handing it over and saying, you know what? I did my part. Thank you. I bow out. Awesome. You know what? I'm glad you're able to be aware of the situation and that this is the way that you want to handle that. More power to you. But sometimes faculty isn't that aware of the situation. We might put on too much on our plate, right? We might not know how to say no to things. We might feel overwhelmed and not know who to go to for help or assistance. And again, these mental health issues that might be present within ourselves could potentially move to mental illness. It could lead to anxiety. It could lead to depression. It could lead to other issues if we have maladaptive behaviors. In other words, if we start to try to self-medicate or to try and relax or reduce the anxiety or the feelings that we have by, smoking, drinking, things of that nature. So again, mental health and mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what your status is. It doesn't care what your title is. It doesn't go, oh, you're a student. Oh, we're really gonna mess with you. Oh no, you're a faculty member. Oh, can't mess with you. Nah, man, nothing like that. But just like we talked about students, everybody reacts differently to various things and to anything. From someone being told, hey, you know what? Can you teach summer classes? Well, I really wasn't thinking about it, but okay, the money might be good. All right, sure, why not? To someone, I already said I don't want to teach summer classes. How many times do I have to tell people that? We all react to things differently. But again, the difference is, are we able to manage the situations? Do we have the coping skills in place for that? Hopefully, if you're faculty members or even staff members, you know that EPCC offers an EAP, right? An employee assistance program, where through the insurance and through the college, you are allotted certain amount of sessions with a mental health or a provider to help and ease the situation, ease any type of stress or emotional, behavioral, cognitive issues you might be going through. So that was something that was included post or during the pandemic. I don't recall if this was something that was added to before the pandemic or not. Granted, I started at EPCC in 2019, so I don't recall if it was or wasn't. Anyways, there are some issues, there's not issues, there are some things that are out there for not only students, but for faculty as well in this in the type of assistance. Now, let's look at staff. Well, staff most of the time are not involved in the classroom. But if we really think about it, sometimes they're the ones that take the brunt, right? If a student has an issue with a faculty member, they might not go to the faculty member. They might go to the dean's office. They might go to one of the offices and they start venting to one of the staff members. And I can't believe Salas is this. And can you blah, 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 man? And you tell the dean and you tell so and the coordinator. But and they're the ones kind of absorbing everything. So we have just as much as our faculty is the front line for some of the mental health and mental illness issues that our students might be dealing with, our staff are susceptible to that just as much, sometimes even worse. Um, I'll be the first to admit that some students sometimes see staff as less and they treat them less as faculty. And that should not be the case. Staff is a very intricate part of the motion and the cogs that keep EPCC running. Every time I send an email to our staff in Dean Pagel's office, I'm very appreciative of what they do, um, and know that they have to put up with some stuff that I'm sure I don't see on a daily basis. So again, we got to be mindful of all the parts of the whole. It's not just students, it's not just faculty, but we need to include the staff as well. Remember, staff were some of the ones that were the first to come back to campus. You know, if we didn't teach during the summer, or if we had all of our online classes, there was still someone here on campus, whether it be 50-50, whether it be at 50%, at 25%, regardless of what percentage, we still had staff members that had to come to campus and still had to keep the college running. So there is some added stress to the position as staff members that maybe us as faculty, or some of us as faculty members and as students might not have had. Having to work from home and still having to address issues from students, having to learn new techniques on how to contact students, through the virtual, not classrooms, but the virtual offices, or changing their phone lines so that their phone system now goes directly to their cell phones. There was a lot of adaptation, and I feel that maybe they didn't get the recognition that they deserve. Okay. So now we get to the meat and potatoes, right? Not that the rest wasn't the meat and potatoes, but how can we help? And this goes across the board, not just for students, not just for faculty, but staff as well. Be present. And I don't mean just show up. Ta-da, I'm here, I'm present. No, no, no. Be there. When someone's talking to you, listen. Really be there for them. Hey, man, how's it going? Everything going all right? That's great. Uh, the last installment of these mental health focus on mental health Fridays is titled Cows, and the cow, the crisis of the week. And we're really going to dive into that, the being present and being genuine and listening to our colleagues and how to go about doing so, and potentially how can we direct them and how can we be helpful in that situation. So be present, literally, just be there. If you ask, how's your day? Don't just walk, hey, how's it going? And you're off. At least wait for a reply, man. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Yeah, it's great to hear. Hey, good to see you. Something like that goes a long way. Listen, pay attention. We talk to our students about, oh, you don't pay attention. Hey, we can't, as they say, was it the tea kettle calling the pot black? We can't do as I say, not as I do. Listen, pay attention. If you see that someone might be having a bad day, hey, everything all right? You doing good? What's going on? Is there anything I can help you with? Or just, hey, how was your weekend? Everything all right? Oh yeah, that's great, man. I'm glad to hear it. Glad you had a good weekend. Validate validate feelings and emotions. Now, there's usually a graphic that goes with this, and I forgot to put it on here. And I explained to my students the difference between sympathy, empathy, and apathy, right? The apathies, the athies. Apathy is when you could care less. Apathy is when you're apathetic, there's no feeling and emotion, there's nothing. Someone tells you, I just lost my dog. That sucks. Anywho, so what are you going to do after this week? That's apathy. You don't care. There's no, there's really nothing there. It's just like, all right, well, that sucks. Anywho, and we're on. Sympathy is when you dive right in there with them. Oh my God, I can't believe you lost your dog. Oh, that's so sad. I know it reminds you when I lost my dog. It's like, whoa, hold on, wait, what? And so you dive right in there with them. Empathy is where you don't. It's not that you don't care, and it's not that you dive right in there with them, but you're there in a situation where, like, oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that. You want to talk about it? Tell me more about that. I can imagine how hard that might have been you. And so again, it's that you kind of are trying to help them ease, or at least talk about their situation, but you're not diving in there with them, and you're not completely ignoring everything that they're saying. Excuse me. We need to also look at increasing our own self-awareness, our education, and our understanding. Like, whoa, 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 hold up, what? I gotta go back to school? No, 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 not at all. Be aware that we have biases. We have preconceived notions and possibly ideas of who someone might be, what a feeling and emotion might be. I always tell my students, just because someone tells you they're happy doesn't mean it fits your definition of happy. They look at me weird. I reply, okay, let me tell you, if I came to you tell you this morning, man, I am extremely happy today, what would you think? Well, duh, that you're happy. Okay, but using your definition of happy, right? Right. Well, is there another definition? I'm like, okay, hold up. Let me add to that. I'm really happy because my Cowboys are 5-1 and my Miners are 6-1. And they're like, oh no, pues no, no. I'm like, see, now you know, because now you're like, oh no, I'm not happy anymore because I could care less about the Cowboys. I'm an ABC fan. I'm an everyone but the Cowboys fan. And forget the Miners. Who cares about the Miners? Well, I care about the Miners and I love my Cowboys. So that makes me extremely happy. But that doesn't make you happy. So therefore, we have different definitions of happiness. Hey, there you go. So we're aware that we might have biases, that we have different notions of what happiness is. We have different notions of what sadness, of what made me, of what might cause us to be angry, to be upset, to be happy, to be joyful. To we have different definitions of that. We also have different definitions or concepts of what someone with depression looks like, what someone who has bipolar looks like, someone with PTSD. And things like the mental health first aid that is offered by the EPCC Mental Health Committee, which, if you're a faculty member, I hope you've looked at your emails from the EPCC Mental Health Committee that show that we have some upcoming dates for and registration is open for those mental health first aids, which give you this, it gives you that self-awareness and it educates you to better understand individuals that are going through mental illness issues and to better assist them if they're going through a situation. Again, we're not creating clinicians, we're creating kind of that band-aid, right? That the first responder, the person that is there to try and de-escalate a situation or understand what's going on before the cavalry shows up. So this would be a great way for us to do this, to become self-aware, to educate ourselves, and to understand individuals that are going through mental illness that much better. So it is 1:43, and that leaves us, I believe the session ends at 1:50 or a little bit over, but that leaves me with a couple more minutes with any thoughts that you might have, any questions, comments, concerns, or if you all would like to share any personal experiences with mental health or mental illnesses in your classrooms, in your offices. Um, I wouldn't want you guys to disclose any names or anything of that nature, or stating whether it's you or not. So again, feel free at this point to share anything that you might want or any questions you might have. And don't worry about raising your hand. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and go for it. Abdel, thank you very much. You're welcome. Excuse me. Any questions, comments? Using great. Thank you, Carla. Much appreciated. Can you talk a bit about the staff therapy? Mariana, good question. You know what? I'm gonna look very foolish because I am not quite sure. I don't know if it's through HR that you go about seeking that the EAP or the Employee Assistance Program. I know about it, but again, and this is my ignorance in that, and my fault for not preparing myself further in this. But if you shoot me an email, and here, I guess that would help. Da-da-da-da-da, that's all, folks. If you should, this is my contact information. And again, I always say my selfish plug for my little baby boy. Yay, go Cowboys. Anyways, if you shoot me an email at csala69@epcc.edu, um, I can definitely find that answer for you. As I tell my students, I don't like not knowing, and the least I can do is find out and shoot you an email right back. All right.
Is there any more questions for Mr. Salas? Oh, someone posted an employee relations email.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming today. Thank you, Mr. Salas, for another wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you guys for being such an awesome audience too. So if you didn't catch it earlier, I do have the Tejano passport code for this session. I just posted it in the chat. And if you're not familiar with Tejano passports, let me go ahead and share that information with you. Okay. So Tejano passport points, you come here each week, we give you a code, and they get points towards your own free medallion. There's a silver one, there's a gold one, and you can wear them at graduation. They're pretty cool, and so I highly recommend, if you need more information, you can contact Dr. Quiris, which is on the EPCC, her email's on the screen. Feel free. And then also, before you go, I would like to invite you guys to next week's TVEs. Let me go ahead and share that right now. All right. So next week, we'll be back again with the Mental Health Committee. We're going to be going over the mental health of students, faculty, and staff upon returning on campus. The pandemic has been a trying time for the Tejanos and their family. And as we return to some semblance of normalcy, what should and could we expect? What can faculty, staff, and students expect? And what we can all do to ease any tensions we may have while we return to campus. Also next week, we'll be having in the same link at 3 p.m., we'll be having properties of logarithms, exponential and logarithmic equations, and basic matrix operations and inverses. Thank you all again for coming today. Y'all have been lovely, and have a wonderful day.